Star Wars, the greatest trilogy, 9-film saga. Fuck! So over the weekend, while I was away, the big news hit that Rian Johnson is getting his own Star Wars trilogy, which is nice, I guess. Here's the headline from IGN. By the way, I'm going to try not to rip into this writer because tomorrow's article is literally the worst professionally published article I've ever seen that pertains to Star Wars. So here's what IGN had to say. It was announced this week that Rian Johnson, the director of Star Wars The Last Jedi, would be conceiving and writing the first of a brand new trilogy of Star Wars feature films that will not bear the series' trademark Roman numerals. It sounds like this new trilogy will be set apart from the lives of Luke Skywalker and General Leia and will not involve Rey, Finn, or any characters introduced in The Force Awakens. Thank God. It will look at a brand new, heretofore unexplored area of the Star Wars universe, and will involve, according to what little we know so far, new characters exclusively. We all must begrudgingly admit that Star Wars, for however popular and acclaimed the films may be, has long reached a point of story stagnation. Ever since, Return of the Jedi, the Star Wars series has slipped into a comfortable circular track where it can only surround the same story points and characters time and time again. Looking ever inward. The Star Wars universe has always tantalized the audience with its weird aliens, vast distant planets, mythic realms, and magical powers and endless potential. But for years, it's only been exploring the smaller and smaller details of a well-known set of established scenarios that are becoming far too familiar. Star Wars stopped expanding and opted instead to make its own world finite. Expansion has been replaced by making its own bound circles more detailed. Return of the Jedi, coming off the dark and daring promise of the previous film's ambiguous cliffhanger ending, turned the series into something all too familiar. Don't get me wrong, there are many thrilling sequences in Jedi. The entire opening inside of Jabba the Hutt's palace is pretty wonderful in and of itself. And the entire film features some awesome creature design and first-rate special effects, but it was also bloated, 136 minutes long, and so frustratingly reuses the finale of the first film that it may be considered an outright ripoff. Disagree there. Return of the Jedi was a less grand conclusion to a larger saga than it was a celebration of how popular Star Wars had become. The roles of certain characters have been inflated in importance because they were important to us, the audience, and not because they were logically needed in the Rebels' war effort. Why did they rescue Han Solo? Was he that important to the rebellion? I would say not. He was rescued because audiences liked him, and the characters are all friends now. The 4 prequel movies, and we mustn't forget the animated film, may, at first glance, look like something fresh and original, but overall, they merely told the story of Darth Vader. Why tell that story? Because we like Darth Vader. Like Han Solo, he's important to us. In the years from the Jedi sequels, don't forget the Ewoks movie, up until The Phantom Menace, the legend of Darth Vader grew in the estimation of fans, and many concluded they had to be more important than a villain in the space opera. He had to be more deeply explored, and his significance within Star Wars had to be inflated. Some would say, artificially. The entire function of the prequel films is essentially fan service, something to fill in the epic myth that the fans had constructed for the character over the course of decades and hundreds of rewatchings. I don't buy for a second that George Lucas had, as some have claimed, an entire 6-episode arc in his mind at the inception of Star Wars. Every progressive chapter was made as a reaction to, and not a natural following of, the one that preceded it. The Force Awakens, for however much we may love it, you're on your own, bitch, it is most certainly fan service. While it did indeed deal in new characters in the lead roles, many immediately noticed that the story was a rehash of 1977's original, and that most of the new characters were more or less the younger reboots of established characters. It's like Tiny Toon Adventures. As Bugs Bunny is to Babs and Buster Bunny, so is Luke Skywalker to Finn and Rey. As the Roadrunner is to Little Beeper, so R2-D2 is to BB-8. The analogy is sound.
Wrong!
Meanwhile, Rogue One was a veritable orgy of fan service. Its only redeeming feature is that it fleshed out something we already knew about Star Wars. It almost defiantly didn't expand the universe in any significant way. It only colored in some spots that were blank, and some have argued it didn't need to be filled in, allowing the filmmakers to cynically hand over a fan package of nothing but nostalgia imagery. When it was announced that they would be making a young Han Solo film, Disney made their intentions clear. No risk, nothing new. Same story and the same characters. It was looking for a second like Disney had no interest in doing anything truly creative with Star Wars, which they fucking don't. They want to stay at the well, continue old stories, and cleave to origins that we already care about. Our goodwill was merely grandfathered in. It's telling that the most striking and daring films of the Star Wars series, following Return of the Jedi, were the televised Ewok films. At least those had wizards and dragons and other weird psychedelic stuff that was unique to Star Wars. So news of a new trilogy of films that will abandon the Skywalkers, leave Darth Vader behind, and cut the umbilical cord from the Millennium Falcon. Finally, after many years, we will be turning towards something new. Perhaps there was a different front during the rebellion. You don't want that because that's essentially the same timeline. That's essentially what you don't want. That is exactly what you fucking spent 4 poorly written, overly bloated paragraphs bitching about. Perhaps there is a corner of the galaxy where the Empire didn't reach, and other, more malevolent forces were at work. Perhaps there are people who use the Force in entirely new ways and call it by a different name. Perhaps we will fast forward 10,000 years and see the distant results of the events of the first films, a notion attempted in the Dune series. The point being, there's so much in Star Wars that can be explored, so many creative stories that can be told, so many weird critters to live with. We've been too focused on a small series of events to look outward at how big that universe truly might be. Rian Johnson's new series of films, should they live up to the promise, could finally give notion and electricity to a universe that's lived too long in one spot. It may be a comforting spot, and it may be pleasant to live there, but you gotta leave the yard sometime. So it's interesting, and dare I say refreshing, to hear IGN say something honest about Episode 7, but ultimately they're full of shit. It was nice to hear, and I'm paraphrasing here, a new trilogy of films that will abandon the Skywalkers, leave Darth Vader behind, and cut the umbilical cord from the Millennium Falcon is incredibly exciting. Yeah, but that should have been where we are now, and Disney knows it. For all the evil, satanic, and mean things you can say about Disney, the one thing you can't say about them is that they're stupid. For every video I make lambasting their stupid nostalgia-filled garbage, there's a few shrewd businessmen behind closed doors who said it before I could. So with this news of a new trilogy, I'm not nerding out like, oh my god, more Star Wars! I'm thinking to myself, duh, they have to do this. This is the only logical place they can go. People are already tired of the new characters. They're failures. Rey, Finn, and Poe have added nothing to Star Wars or to pop culture in general outside of shitty toys that rot on shelves. And Disney knows this. When the demand is high, people want the merchandise, but this time around, not so much. Disney knows that the Adventures of Rey won't sell shit. Her journey is over, and people are only coming out to see The Last Jedi for Luke Skywalker. They knew that Han Solo would bring him in for The Force Awakens, but can they pull it off a third time? I say they can't. Lando would be in next, but they can't use him because Finn's the only black character in Star Wars that has ever had merchandise. And Kylo Ren's descent and/or redemption means absolutely nothing to anyone. So my feelings for this new trilogy are meh. Ambivalent would be the word to best describe me. I don't really care. I think they'll change their nostalgia act up because they have to. No one's really going to grow up on these new films and demand Poe Dameron merchandise in 40 years from now. What this forthcoming trilogy is a way to hook a new generation of Star Wars fans with a clean slate approach. They can't count on the nostalgia factor, but there can't be as much of a backlash when rehashing ideas. Or so they think. It's Disney and they'll always take the easy way out, just like EA. Where we go from here should be exciting, but even though they're going to have no Rey, Finn, Poe, Kylo Ren, Captain Phasma, or any of the other chocolate Easter Bunny equivalents of what Disney calls a character, there will always be the oversaturation of shitty toys, broken video games, and idiot fans. That's what I'm most tired of. A lack of respect for the brand. More doesn't always equal better, and with Star Wars, that has been the case for a long, long time. So that's it for today. Are you excited for the new trilogy? Probably not if you're a fan of this channel, but if you are, tell me in the comments section down below. Also, make sure you're subscribed to this channel for tomorrow's video, because I shit you not, I have found the absolute worst Star Wars article, and it's meant to be 100% serious, so don't miss out. It's essentially the Star Wars equivalent of My Immortal, if you will. So thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, thanks for commenting, thanks for sharing this video, and if you can, help us out over on Patreon. $1 a month or more goes a long, long way. We're getting ready to upgrade all of our equipment, so thank you for that. And this week we're going to show you guys some of the cooler things you get for being a patron. So a couple of our patrons are coming together, and we're going to make a world-class bullshitters video on the Twilight Zone. We're going to sit down, have a nice discussion with some of the guys. And if you're not a fan of the Twilight Zone, that's fine. But my point is, this is what you get when you're a patron of World Class Bullshitters. You get to hang out with us. We do a video on anything you want. We'll put it here on the channel. You can talk about anything you want, as long as it pertains to entertainment, because we're not really a gardening channel after all. But if you like the Twilight Zone, it's going to be exciting. If you like us, it's going to be exciting. And head on over to Patreon, join up, and figure out what you'd like to have us talk about with us on air. So I'll be back tomorrow with my... God, I can't even talk about it. I shit you not. Again, I shit you not. This article is so fucking bad that I had to look this writer up to see if they were a real human being, because they sound like a fucking robot. They're just hitting all the right words. And if somebody told me in a couple years that this was one of those articles written by AI, I'd believe it.